Joanna Berger, the animal behaviorist, and I want to talk about enrichment. So enrichment is my favorite topic. I did a parrot enrichment study for my master's dissertation, and I tweet about parrot enrichment with the hashtag parrot enrichment on Twitter every day. I give out a daily parrot enrichment tip and share lots of great examples of things that people are doing to keep their parrots happy and occupied. So there are a lot of misconceptions about what enrichment actually is, and I want to clarify the definition of enrichment today in this little video. So one big misconception about enrichment is that enrichment is a synonym for toys. And so what happens when you think that enrichment just means toys is that people will go to the pet store, buy toys that they find in the parrot section, hang them up in their bird's cage, and then think that they have provided their bird with lots of enrichment. But what can happen is those toys may not be interesting to the bird, and the bird might just sit still in the cage, inactive, and not actually play with the toys. So you end up with a parrot sitting still in the middle of a cage. The cage is full of toys. So it looks like the bird has enrichment, but the bird is not using any of the toys. They're not manipulating them, chewing on them, or interacting with them. So in that case, I would argue that that bird does not actually have enrichment. The way I like to define enrichment is that it is a way to bring out the natural behaviors of an animal. So when I'm designing enrichment, I want to start with the question, what natural behavior can I bring out with this enrichment that I'm designing? So an example of a natural behavior that's really important for parrots is chewing. They do have these amazing hook beaks. And, I studied African gray parrots, so you can imagine a Congo or even a Timna's big bill that is hooked and curved. Those beaks have evolved to chew apart fruit, strip bark off of trees. They even use them a bit when digging for roots to eat. And they're extremely dexterous. They have loads of muscles that operate the beak. They've got really strong tongues too. So chewing is a complex and important natural behavior. It can cause problems for people who own birds, because that if you're not providing your birds with lots of chewing enrichment options, then that natural chewing behavior can occur on your walls or doors or cabinets and furniture. Or it can be even worse for the bird if the bird is in a cage most of the time and also doesn't have access to things to chew. They might chew on the bars of the cage or chew on their own feathers and eventually injure themselves. So let's talk about chewing as just one natural behavior that we can work to bring about in captivity. So how might I design a type of enrichment that would promote natural parrot chewing behavior? So back to the example of the pet owner who goes to the pet store and buys a toy in the bird section and hangs it up in the cage. If that toy is really hard, maybe made of plastic or a really hard wood, and the bird has never practiced chewing that type of material before, the bird might not know that they can even try to chew that toy. So instead of one that is something that's marketed as a toy that isn't very chewable, I would recommend something like a soft wood for a parrot who's just starting to learn about chewing, or if we're providing enrichment for a bird like a budgie who has an amazing beak, but the beak is very small, a soft wood is going to be the best way to start there. So balsa is a type of wood that you can buy at your pet store, and balsa wood is really, really soft and quite easy to chew. But even another thing that you can use that's even less expensive than balsa wood is paper or cardboard. And for African gray parrots, a lot of them love chewing cardboard. And actually, a lot of parrots of multiple species will really enjoy chewing on pieces of cardboard. And they will also often really enjoy chewing on paper. And paper and cardboard are freely available. I know I get lots in my mailbox. I get lots of junk mail, and I can take all that junk mail and give the paper and cardboard pieces to parrots to chew. And so you might so going back to our example, we have the pet owner who's gone to the pet store, bought a toy that's made of plastic or something, hangs it up. The bird isn't interested in chewing that. It's just hanging there. The next day, this pet owner just gives their bird a cardboard box, and the bird chews up the whole cardboard box and spends hours and hours chewing the cardboard box. In that case, the cardboard box is much better enrichment than the toy that was bought at the pet store. And we just need to think about what we are giving to our pets and how they can use them and how that fits with their natural behavior and their behavior in the wild. With chewing, we can also offer different types of perches that have bark on them instead of a perch that is just a smooth piece of wood that doesn't have any bark. If you can do a natural perch and leave the bark on, as long as it's a parrot-safe wood like dogwood, or apple wood that's not from a tree that's never been treated with chemicals, leave the bark on the perch, and then the birds can spend lots of time chewing and stripping that bark off. And that will keep their beaks and minds and bodies occupied. And then it allows them to express that natural behavior that is so important in giving them an outlet for that. So they're expressing that either on the cardboard box or the paper or by stripping bark off of a natural perch. That way they're not directing it onto themselves and chewing up their feathers. So chewing was just one example of a natural behavior, but let's think of another natural behavior that a parrot would do in the wild. Another natural behavior is climbing. So we can design enrichment that promotes climbing. And you can do this by moving perches around, having multiple perches. I've seen this go really well with boing perches, which are the spiral hanging rope perches. I know that I just recently saw that a company is making natural organic boing perches that aren't made with cotton, so they're even safer for parrots. I think they're made with hemp, and so the hemp is less likely to fray than the cotton and less likely to injure the birds. So I think those are really cool. But boing perches can be a really good way to promote climbing activity because the bird has to balance and grip onto that hanging, moving boing perch. And another great way to promote climbing enrichment or climbing behavior with enrichment is to get one of those big nets that are often sold at bird stores and hang it on your wall. That gives your bird a whole wall to climb because they can grip onto the parts of the net. So instead of it being a smooth wall surface, your bird has lots of locations to grab with his or her toes and They also use their beaks in climbing, so they can grab with the beak as well and get lots of exercise performing natural climbing behavior. And it's really important to promote climbing behavior because it's extremely important for their health, because they need to exercise their muscles. And it's also good for their psychological health because it'll keep them occupied, happy, and entertained. So that they're not becoming bored and frustrated and developing psychological problems. So climbing is another natural behavior that you might elicit with enrichment. And there's a bunch of different ways you could design enrichment that promotes climbing. There are ladders that you can buy, those wooden ladders. Those can be a good way to promote climbing. You can make your own perches and bird trees, or you can buy the Java trees, but you want lots of branches that are going in different directions at different levels so that your bird and that are within reach of your bird, so your bird can really grab onto the branches and climb the way they would a tree in their natural habitat. We could promote walking behavior. Walking is a natural behavior, another way to give your bird exercise. Many parrots will spend time walking across the ground in the wild, so simply placing your bird onto the floor can be a way to provide walking time and enrichment for your bird. You may want to spread a sheet over your floor to prevent your floor from getting poop all over it. And you also, if you have a carpet on your floor, putting an old sheet down can help prevent your bird's nails from getting stuck in the carpet, especially if it's that little looping carpet. Or you can have a large shelf that your bird can walk across. You can take your bird for outings on a harness. There are different bird leashes that are available. Sometimes you want to do some positive reinforcement training to introduce them to the leash if they're not used to using it yet. But it is something you can teach your bird to use. You can also you can have large shelves for them to walk across. You can also have like the top of a cabinet set aside as a parrot play area. If it's a long one, they can walk back and forth across that. A long perch will provide walking opportunities. If it's long enough, they can walk from one end of the perch to the other. And sometimes having a social grouping of birds can promote more walking as they interact with each other socially. A lot of that social behavior will bring about walking because a lot of social behavior of, I know for sure, African gray parrots includes walking to another African gray and then walking away from that African gray as they figure out their relationships to one another. And another great way to promote walking behavior would be to have either like a kitchen island or a countertop that is an area where your bird is allowed to play and be, and if it's long, your bird can walk back and forth along that. So I've talked about chewing behavior, climbing behavior, and walking behavior as three natural behaviors that do occur in the wild in the parrot's natural habitat that can be promoted inside of your home through designing enrichment. But again, because this video is about defining enrichment, I think it's really useful for pet owners to start thinking about what are the natural behaviors that I'm going to promote, and then using that as the way to create, come up with creative ideas of how you might get your bird to do those behaviors. So that they're spending less time sitting still, being depressed, or anxiously chewing at their feathers, or performing other abnormal repetitive behaviors that are signs of poor welfare. So there are many natural behaviors that are really good for birds to be performing. So another example would be flying. You can use flight training, positive reinforcement training to teach your bird to fly in a specific path or to come when called. And that can be a great way to give your bird flying enrichment. And there are another natural behavior is bathing. So simply giving your bird a dish full of water that's heavy enough that your bird isn't knocking it over. A Pyrex dish works well for many parrots, and then just filling that Pyrex dish with water, maybe giving your bird treats for looking at the Pyrex dish, moving towards it, or getting into it, and making sure it's a really positive experience for your bird. That can promote bathing behavior. And of course, you can also spray using a spray bottle. You can, I was taught to spray up towards the ceiling and then have the mist of the water fall down over the bird, because that's more like rain, and that can also elicit a lot of natural bathing behavior. And if your bird is spending time bathing, and that bathing behavior includes stretching the wings and doing lots of nice body movements that involve, lots of nice stretching, some good exercise, lots of nice, calm, happy behavior, then, the more time they're spending bathing, the less time they're spending pulling out their feathers or performing abnormal behaviors or just sitting still and being very depressed. So there are actually infinite ways to design enrichment that could elicit or promote each of these natural behaviors. And there are many natural behaviors that are good for parrots to be performing. Sometimes I am asked, like, well, you say reinforce good behaviors or promote good behaviors, but I don't, what do you mean? What is a good behavior? I only notice when my bird is being bad. And there's lots of good behaviors: stretching and bathing and chewing and walking and climbing and flying, and hanging, balancing, sorting through things to find a toy that they like the best, problem solving. Let's see, there's many normal behaviors. I can include a link to my master's thesis at the bottom of this video, and in that I did list a lot of foraging behaviors and social behaviors of African gray parrots within a large naturalistic aviary, and so that can give you some idea of some behaviors you may want to promote through designing enrichment for your pets. And we can continue this conversation below. Please, leave a comment with any questions or ideas that you have about how, what behaviors you might want your bird to do, and how you might design a toy or an enrichment item that would actually promote those behaviors. Often I will finish with the note that enrichment items do not need to be expensive. My example of going to the pet store and buying a toy that your bird doesn't use, compared with giving your bird a piece of cardboard that they do end up chewing for hours, the cardboard could be free. I often hear from pet owners that they're sick of spending so much money on toys that their birds don't even use, or toys that don't last very long because their birds do use them. We do want these toys to be destroyed because we want to promote chewing behavior. That is the whole point. But that means that the toys don't last very long if the bird is using them. So there are many inexpensive or free options. Pine cones and pine bark mulch can be heated in the oven to try to kill the germs, and you can give those to your birds. Super cheap. Lots of natural woods like dogwood and apple that hasn't been treated, and pine is parrot safe. Then there's lots of things that just come in the mail, like paper or cardboard, all the packaging. I tell people, go through your recycling bin, pull out stuff that your parrot can chew on. Corks from old wine bottles can be good for chewing enrichment. You know, you can buy a pumpkin for like 99 cents here, and that can provide a ton of chewing enrichment as well. Feeding foods raw instead of cooking them, so giving raw vegetables, not just pumpkins, but also squash or zucchini or big leafy greens. All that can, instead of chopping it up for your bird can tear it up themselves, and that is a good way to provide chewing enrichment that's very inexpensive. There's a million free ways to provide your bird with enrichment. It does take a little bit of creativity and a little bit of time on your part, but some of these are not even that time consuming. You know, just sticking an old magazine or a phone book or old toilet paper rolls into your parrot's cage can provide them with hours of fun. And we do want to, like when we're designing enrichment, we want to maximize how much time the bird spends enjoying that. So a cardboard box might provide a lot of chewing enrichment, a lot of hours of fun. I hope this video helped you start thinking about ways to promote natural behaviors that are really good for your birds, to keep them really happy and healthy, and how that's a little different than just getting toys. I don't have anything against toys, but sometimes they're not designed with the bird's behavior in mind, and so just hanging them up might not be adequate. And every bird has their own personality, their own likes and dislikes. They're all unique individuals. So if your bird is not interacting with maybe a cardboard box, try paper. And so there are birds for whom a cardboard box is not a good enrichment item, but paper is a great, a good enrichment item and will keep them entertained for hours. So it's all about working with your bird and observing how they interact with whatever you give them. And that helps us decide what is actually beneficial enrichment. And I hope that you have started thinking about promoting natural behaviors, and I hope that you'll leave comments below with some ways that you've done this. This is just a video to get started on the idea of enrichment, but it's a big topic and I can talk about it for hours, so I'm going to finish this video now, but there will definitely be more videos on this topic, and there already are other talks and presentations that I've given on parrot enrichment on my YouTube channel, so you're welcome to go back and look for those, including some that I've given to parrot clubs and professional conferences. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have lots of fun with your pets, and your pets have lots of fun with their enrichment items. Have a great day. Bye.